Asmad Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Parama Gurubhyo Namaha, Asmad Sarva Gurubhyo Namaha. So we're again reading from Hari Bhakti Vilas, the 8th Vilas, and we have finished discussing how that we worship the deity externally. We're worshiping as a paradigm, we're worshiping Lord Krishna with the 18-syllable Gopal Mantra. And at the end of the external worship, we offer different prayers, and we even offer ourselves, we even surrender unto the Lord. And then after all of that is finished, now we come to a section which is entitled Japa. Japa means the chanting of a mantra over and over again. So normally, Japa would mean that there would be a short mantra. Not up until now, we've been offering longer prayers. We started out, we had some prayers from Gopal Upanishad, Om Namo Vishwarupaya Vishwashti Antahedave, very, very common prayer to Lord Krishna. And some other, even the Vishnu Sahasranam was mentioned, the 1,000 names of Vishnu. So these are longer prayers. We don't consider the chanting of those prayers as japa. So the word japa doesn't actually translate into English as just prayers, right? Because it means, japa means it's a type of meditation, right? The definition of japa is Janma Nished Papanashana iti japaha. So Janma Nished, that activity which helps us to destroy rebirth and to destroy sin. Janma Nished, no more. We have this word nishida we see here in Hari Bhakti Vilas a lot. It means prohibition. So rebirth will be prohibited, and papa nashana. Nashana means to destroy. So and sin will be destroyed. Of course, sin is destroyed. If you don't want to be reborn, if you want to go to moksha, liberation, of course, sin has to be destroyed. So sin has to be destroyed, or it has to be transferred, or something. When we talk about sin, we're talking about karma, the reaction to the sin, right? And that can also, sin, when we say sin here, papa, we also mean punya. We also mean pious activity. Both pious activities and sinful activities bind us to this material world. All of them have to go. We have to get rid of the reactions to both sin and to pious activities before we can reach moksha. So japa is janma nished papanashana, that rebirth will be freedom from rebirth will be assured, and sin will be destroyed through the process of japa. So that's actually the definition of japa, the Sanskrit definition. In terms of general understanding, japa is a type of meditation where we repeat a mantra. So because we're repeating a mantra, it can't be a very long mantra like Vishnu Sahasranam or Bhagavad Gita or some of these prayers that we were discussing in the last session, like the prayer from Gopal Upanishad, etc. So it's a shorter mantra. So there's different lengths of mantras. So we start out with the very syllabic mantra, a mantra which is one syllable, which is called a bija mantra or a seed mantra. So that's the shortest type of mantra, and the paradigm of the short mantra or the bija mantra is Omkara, Om. So which is just Om. So normally a bija mantra ends in the Anuswara, ends in this M sound. So in this case, Om represents guttural A to labial U, right? All the way from the throat, all the way to the lips. Every vowel is contained within the O. Ow, ow, ah, starts in the throat and ends with the lips. Ow, throughout the whole mouth. And then adding Anuswara to it, that is Omkara. So that is Akara, Ukara, Makara, Iti. They say it's made of A, U, and M. Okay. So that's the paradigmatic, that's the example of a bija mantra that we have. Now we have other bija mantras which are like Kleem, Hreem, Shreem, right? There are different bija mantras. Now these bija mantras have different meanings, and we can talk about those some other time. But we've heard of Kleem mantra. We've heard of Aim, for instance. Aim is a Saraswati bija. It has to do with knowledge. Hreem has to do with energy, Shakti, power. So we can add Hreem. We could add Hreem to a mantra to make it more powerful. This is all described in Mantra Shastra. right? Hari Bhakti Vilasa is not specifically Mantra Shastra, but it does include some points about Mantra Shastra. We already discussed some of those in the second Vilasa of Hari Bhakti Vilasa when we were talking about mantras for initiation. So we have Shrim, we have Hrim, right? Shrim is a Shri Bead for prosperity, for opulence, right? It represents Lakshmi, right? So Hrim, Shrim. Kleem is the Kama Bead, which has to do with desire, which has to do with Krishna, either with Krishna or with Cupid. Also, Krishna is considered the transcendental Cupid, because the word Krishna, Karshati iti Krishnaha, right? So Karshati means that person who's all attractive is Krishna, right? So we're talking about the worship of Lord Krishna here. So we know that the Kama bead is used in Krishna's worship. It's part of the Gopal Mantra. It's the first word of the Gopal Mantra. So we have the Bija mantras, which are syllabic, and then we have, after the Bija mantras, we have the next biggest mantras are usually called Mullah Mantras. The word Mullah means root, just like a tree has a root. So a big mantra may have a root. It comes from a seed. So the Bija, right? Next after the Bija is the root. The root mantra is usually a Bija plus the name of the deity which is being worshipped in the dative case, singular, right? So that is, either Haraye, Vishnave, Krishnaya, like that, right? This is the dative case, meaning unto that person, unto that personality, unto Hari, unto Vishnu, unto Krishna, right? And then followed by some other words which are special words used in Mantra Shastra to end mantras. And in Mantra Shastra, it talks about different types of mantras. There's masculine, feminine, neuter mantras. Usually we get the neuter mantras ending in Namaha. We get the feminine mantras ending in Swaha. So this is all just categories of mantras. It doesn't mean that men and women use them differently, but it just means the characteristic of the mantra is more feminine, or it's more masculine, or it's more neuter, like that. So the very, very simple way to make a Mullah mantra has already been described in Hari Bhakti Vilas. You take either Omkara or the Bija mantra for the particular deity. You add the name of the deity in the dative case, and then you add Namaha. So, for example, we could say Om, or we could say Kleem, and then we have Krishna. Krishna in the dative case is Krishnaya, and then Namaha. So Kleem Krishnaya Namaha, or Om Krishnaya Namaha, like that. If we wanted to add some things to that mantra, we could add power to that mantra. We could add opulence to that mantra. We could add different things to that mantra. So we could say, for instance, we could say Om, Kleem, Shrim, Hrim, Krishnaya, Namaha. Like that. If we wanted to make that mantra feminine, we could say Om, Hrim, Shrim, Hrim, Kleem, Krishnaya, Swaha, like that. So we have these different ending mantras: Swaha, Namaha, Pat, Bosat, Vasate, and Hum. Okay, these are mantras. These mantras, you'll note, are also used. These particular words are used to end mantras in Anganyasa, right? So we say Hriraya Namaha, Sirase Swaha, Siddhaya Vasate, Kavachaya Hum, Netrabhyam Vosate, Narayana, Viryaya Astraya Pate. So Pat also. Pat is also is an ending. So this is all just part of Mantra Shastra. This is not being explained in Hari Bhakti Vilas, but because we're going to be talking about japa, we're talking about mantras. So we'll have an introduction to mantras here. Later on in the 17th chapter of Hari Bhakti Vilas, we're going to be talking more about Puruscharya, or which is also called Puruscharana. Both mean the same thing. Puruscharya and Puruscharana mean the process by which we do the japa of the mantra. We do tarpana with using the mantra, which means offering water oblations with the mantra. We also offer ghee oblations into the fire with the mantra. That's homa. So we do tarpana, homa, and japa of a mantra, and we also feed Brahmins. And in this way, we use the mantra in many different ways, and therefore we are going to then perfect the mantra. So this is the point of Mantra Shastra, is to teach us how to get siddhi of the mantra, to get the perfection of the mantra, because each mantra will have some purpose. It can fulfill some desires, or it can fulfill some purpose. So in order to fulfill that purpose, it has to not just be chanted once, it has to be chanted many times, or it has to be chanted perfectly. So if you're able to chant it just once perfectly, that's fine. You can achieve the desired result. Otherwise, if you can't do that, then you have to perform this, what's called Purascharya or Purascharana. It's a system by which you will eventually get the perfection of the mantra. I hope that's clear. Okay, so that's going to come up in chapter 17 of Hari Bhakti Vilasa. But for now, we're just going to talk. We're assuming that the person who is performing the worship here of Sri Krishna, right? He is finishing his worship and he's going to do japa of the mantra. We're assuming that he's been initiated. After he's been initiated, right? In the first Vilasa, he seeks a guru. Second Vilasa, he gets initiated. Then from the third Vilasa up to the eighth Vilasa, the guru is teaching him how to worship the deity, right? And so at the end of the worship, the external worship of the deity, he's going to be chanting that mantra. He's going to be doing japa of this mantra. Now, because he's probably the guru has also instructed him how to perfect the mantra, we're assuming that he has already gone through the process of Purascharana or Purascharya, and he's perfected the mantra. So now let's have a look at the book and let's see what they have to say about japa. It may not be as extensive as what I've said here, but anyway, I just want to give you a background into japa before we. So we finished off with the Supreme Lord Uddhava talking in the 11th canto, 29th chapter, 34th verse of Srimad Bhagavatam. A person who gives up all fruitive activities and offers himself entirely to me, eagerly desiring to render service unto me, achieves liberation from birth and death and is promoted to the status of sharing my opulences. So we were talking about there are different types of liberation. One type of liberation is to gain the same type of opulences as the Lord. So there's sarupya, samipya, sarsti, salokya, living in the same place, having the same form, etc., etc. So here he's saying, Lord Krishna is saying to Uddhava that if you completely surrender unto me, you completely dedicate yourself to me, right? What Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, sarva dharmam pariteja mam ekam sharanam vaja aham tva sarva papibhyo mokshayisya jaha. Then you will attain liberation, you will attain the same opulences as me. So that was the end. That's where we finished off. That is it. At the end of the puja, we have to, after praising the Lord, after offering different prayers, we have to submit ourselves to the Lord, bow down to his feet like that, and as we said before, we can hold our hands in Anjali. We can lay out like a stick. Or we can do the Shastanga Pranam with 8 parts of our body, or we can do the Panchanga Pranam with 5 parts of our body, and we can offer obeisances. So after that, we're talking about Japaha. So here it is, 8th chapter, text 422 to 423. Again, the word Ata is used to start a particular topic. So this is the topic of Japa, which I just discussed and gave the definition of. Chanting mantras. Okay, so here it says here. Now, this is going to take us back to some of the things that we discussed before. Before we started the puja, we performed different practices, which are preliminary practices to the performance of japa. Now, and also to puja or to homa or to swajaya, or right whenever we're studying a scripture or we're doing fire ceremony, or we're doing a puja, or we're doing an abhisheka, or bathing of the deity, or we're doing meditation, japa meditation. We should, first of all, there are some things that we have to do. Those things are called japangas. They are angas, or they are ancillary rites to the japa. Japangas. Buddha Shuddhi is one of them. Pranayama is one of them, etc. Different nyasas, right, where we do the Matrika nyasa, the Keshavadi nyasa. All of these nyasas we learned before, and therefore that we should remember all those things from before. So it says here, before chanting mantras, right, before doing japa, a learned person should practice pranayama 3 times, contemplate on the meaning of the mantra, so that pranayama comes first. We can say achamana comes first, then pranayamaha, then dhyana, meditation on the meaning, contemplating the meaning of the mantra, and then chant the Mullah Mantras 108 times on his beads. So if we have a mala, there's different japa malas, which help us to count 108. Right, there'll be 108 beads strung with an extra bead to show us when we finish the 108. Right, this is called the Meru bead or the Krishna bead or whatever you want to call it. That bead is not chanted on. The other beads are rolled between the fingers and counted. You go from one bead to the next bead. You can use a string with knots in it. You can use segments on the hands. There's different ways to count numbers. Okay, so the idea is to simply to count the number of the, now. Also in chapter 17 of Hari Bhakti Vilasa, different types of japamalas will be described, right? For instance, we know made of different materials like quartz crystal or silver or gold or pearls or knots made of kusha grass. There's different types of malas that are used for different purposes, and they give different results. Okay, so you can also have malas that you use with different numbers on them, numbers of beads, like that. So if you want a shorter mala, instead of having 108, you could have half of 108, which is 54, or you could have 27, which is a quarter of 108, or you could have I don't know. There's some other numbers that people use, but these are the typical numbers that you find. Okay, so now. Because some people chant different numbers of mantras. Okay, so before chanting mantras, you have to do the pranayama 3 times, meditate on the meaning of the mantra, and then chant the Mullah Mantras 108 times on the beads, according to the prescribed rules and regulations. So remember, the prescribed rules and regulations for one person may be different from another person, right? Depending on how his guru tells him to do that. So you have to follow your particular guru lineage, and your parampara and your sampradaya also may have slightly different rules. So just consult your guru, and he will tell you how to do that. If one is capable of doing so, then he should chant the Mullah Mantras 1,008 times. Okay, so either 108 or 1,008 times. After finishing this chanting, one should again perform pranayama 3 times and offer a little water to the hand of Sri Krishna. Right. So we did this when we were offering ourselves to Krishna. We also offered some water. Either we offer some water through our hand or we offer some water through his hand. And the water that is offered through his hand, it's also very similar to the when we offer water through our hand. That is a sankalpa, and the sankalpa by the Lord should be to save us or to accept us, to accept our surrender, to accept our japa, whatever we've done. Okay, so it's interesting to note here that the pranayama is done before and after. This is the usual system in South India, is that the smartas usually do this. They do things first, and then they do japa, they do pranayama and nyasa before and after. Okay. In the case of doing nyasa afterwards, instead of doing a digbandha, instead of closing the directions around you like a force field, you open up the directions. It's called digvimokaha instead of digbandha. So even pancha puja, five pujas which are done mentally offering these 5 upacharas, gandha, pushpa, dhupa, deepa, and naivedya. These are done on the hands with chanting of the mantra. These are done before and also afterwards. It's not mentioned here, but it can be done like that. This is called Pancha Puja. Smartas also do this in South India. So this is Lampatityatmani, Gandham Samapayami, Hamakashatmani, etc. So and mention of the 5 gross elements when we do this, right? This Pancha Puja has to do with the 5 elements. Okay, so now he's talking about here. The mantra is what? The mantra to be chanted, I guess. The mantra is Guhyati Guhya Goptatvam Grahanasmat Kritam Japam Siddhir Bhavatu Me Deva Tvat Prasadat Tvayi Stite. And we have the word here et. Et means thus, and it shows that this mantra is to be chanted. So it says, O Lord, knowledge of you is very confidential, and you protect the most confidential subjects of the Vedic understanding. Kindly accept this chanting of my mantra. May I attain the same perfection as that which is enjoyed by your unalloyed devotees. Now, so what does it mean here? This is a prayer which we say when we finish our japa, when we finish japa. So we can call it a japa samarpana mantra, right? Or japa samarpata, or japa samarpana. We say Sri Krishnapana Mastu, Samarpana Mastu. After we offer it, Samarpana, Samapta. Samapta means end, Samarpana means offering. So when we finish doing our japa of the different Mullah Mantras. So the Mullah Mantra, remember the Mullah Mantra for this particular type of worship of Krishna that we're doing is the Gopal Mantra, the 18-syllable Gopal Mantra. Krishna Govinda Gopijana Vallabhaya Swaha. So that mantra will be repeated here 108 or 1008 times. And then at the end, after, we will say this mantra. Guhyati Guhya Gopta Tvam Rahanasmat Pitam Japam Siddhir Bhavatu Me Deva Fat Prasadat Tvayi Stite. So this is a prayer to Krishna to give me the perfection from chanting this japa. Right? May I attain the same perfection as that which is enjoyed by your unalloyed pure devotees. Okay. So continuing on with text 425 to 426, right? The particular procedure, right, and rules regarding the chanting of mantras will be described later on, right? In the Purishcharya section of this book, which I told you about, is chapter 17. So it says here, japa prakaro, the prakara or the section on japa, right? Maladi, beginning with explanation of different malas, different rosaries, right? And the niyamas, the rules about them. Purishcharya prasangatu. It's in the Purishcharya section, right? Okay, so we'll see that later on. One should think that the Supreme Lord has acknowledged his chanting of mantras. Thereafter, one should glorify the Lord and pray to him in the following manner after offering obeisances. So we finish praising the Lord with the stotras that we talked about after we finished the external offerings, the external upacharas of the worship, the sodas upacharas, the 16 different articles of worship or services. So we do those prayers. Then after we do those prayers, then we do the japa of the basic mantras that we use to worship the Lord and also of his associates and consorts and the other deities that we also worship, right? The Mullah Mantras. Either Mullah Mantras or Gayatri Mantras or both like that are chanted. They're chanted what? 108 or 1008 times according to Hari Bhakti Vilasa. Some Padadis may say less. If we have many, many mantras to chant, we're probably not going to spend 1008 or 108 times chanting, but we may chant 10 times or something like that. So then after that's finished, there was that prayer to achieve the perfection of chanting those mantras. And now what we're talking about is right, understanding more about the process of japa in another part of the book of Hari Bhakti Vilasa. So he's saying we're not going to talk more about that now. We're going to talk about that later, and that will come up in the 17th Vilasa. So one should think that the Supreme Lord has acknowledged his chanting of the mantras. Thereafter, he should glorify the Lord and pray to him in the following manner, right? After offering obeisances. So after this is finished, after we do the japa of the mantras, and we pray for the perfection of the japa of the mantras, right? Then, by chanting that prayer, then we should offer our obeisances. And it's already been explained what obeisances were. We already did offer obeisances. Here we are offering obeisances again. So multiple obeisances are called for in this procedure. So we're offering obeisances again, either shastanga, flat out like a rod, like a dandavat on the ground, or panchanga pranam 5, either with 8 parts of the body or 5 parts of the body. Okay. Now we come to prayers to be offered after the japa. So we have these two sections of prayers coming after the puja. First set of prayers and then the japa, and then another set of prayers after the japa. Okay, so ata pratanam. Now we're going to talk about prayers, right? So again, it's a new topic. Ata means a new topic. Pratanam, prayers. So now from the agamas, it's going to give what we call Chamashwarapuna prayers. So after this, we're going to offer prayers. Chamashwarapuna means please forgive me. Prayers for forgiveness. So in case we performed any apparatus or any apacharas, any seva apparatus, any offenses in the worship, in the procedure of worship that we just performed, right? We have to beg the Lord's forgiveness for those offenses. So here we have mantrahinam, kriyahinam, bhaktihinam, janardana, yapujidam mayadeva, paripurnam tarastame. This is a very common prayer, and we should pray like this. We should think, unknowingly or unknowingly, if we've done anything wrong, the Lord should forgive all those things and make everything complete. So, O Janardana, O Lord, I do not know, I do not properly know any mantra or any religious ritual, nor do I have any devotion for you. May my worship to you become complete by your mercy. Okay. So we have, continuing on, we have more Chamashwarapuna mantras here, more mantras for getting forgiveness. Yadanam Bhakti Matrena Patram Pushpam Palam Jalam Advedam Nivedintu Tadgrihana Kampaya Vidihinam Mantrahinam Yakinchida Papadam Kriya Mantrahinam Tatsarvam Chantamahasi. Everybody knows these mantras, okay? These mantras are given in Archana Padati. These mantras are probably in Pancharattrapati, I'm not sure. But anyway, they're common mantras which we use, and they're all from Hari Bhakti Vilas, and they're to forgiveness of offenses like that. So everybody knows this. So, O Lord, kindly accept whatever, leaves, fruits, flowers, right? It's very interesting because this line, Patram Pushpam Palam Jalam, is very much like Patram Pushpam Palam Toyam, Yome Bhaktiya Prayashanti, Tadaham Bhaktiya Upakrityam, Ashnami Prayatat Manaha, which is Bhagavad Gita 9:32, I believe. Anyway. So in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, offer to me a fruit, a flower, a leaf, and some water, and I'll accept them if you offer them with love and devotion. But here, they've taken the same things, the fruit, the flower, the leaf, the water, and they said, we've offered you those things, please accept those things, even though we've offered them in an incorrect way. So, O Lord, kindly accept whatever leaves, flowers, leaves means tulsi leaves mostly, but the other leaves can be used. Fruits and flowers we talked about extensively before. Fruits, we haven't really talked about different types of fruits, but there's many different types of fruits can be offered. And it also means other forms of edibles, right, that we offer in the Naivedyam, other cooked vegetables as well, and rice and all these other items. And water means water, but it also can mean all sorts of liquids and drinks and things like that. So I have offered to you with devotion. I do not know any mantras. I am not aware of the prescribed rules and regulations, and I do not know how to perform. This person is doing Naichana Sandhanam, which means the person praying like this is being humble. He's humbling himself before the Lord, and he's saying, I really don't know how to offer these things to you, but please accept them. So I do not know how to properly perform the required rituals. Still, it is my fervent hope that you will kindly forgive all my offenses. And we continue on with more prayers for forgiveness. We need a lot of forgiveness because we should always be thinking that we are committing mistakes all the time, and we should never be overconfident of pleasing the Lord. We should always think that our service is incomplete and not up to scratch. So agyanad atavad gyanad ashubam namayatam chantamarasidat sarvam dasya neva grihanamam stidaseva kriya smidastinja chinta sitir vachaha bhuyat saratmana vishno mariam traitestam. See, everybody knows these ones also. Please forgive all the offenses that I have committed knowingly or unknowingly, for I am your eternal servant. O Lord Vishnu, may my existence, service, destination, movements, remembrance, thoughts, prayers, and speech be aimed at pleasing you. And it's also said here, continuing on, more prayers, right? Krishna Rama Mukunda Vamana, Vasudeva Jagat Guru. So it should be actually Krishna Rama Mukunda Vamana Vasudeva Jagat Guru. Matsya Kachapa Narasimha Vraha Raghava Pahimam Deva Danava Naradadi Vandya Dayanide Devaki Sutta Dehi Me Tava Pada Bhaktim Achanchalam. So, O Krishna, O Rama, O Mukunda, O Vamana, O Vasudeva, O spiritual master of the universe, O Matsya, O Varaha, O Narasimha, O Kurma, O Raghava, please protect me and maintain me, O my Lord, who is worshipped by the demigods and demons, O ocean of mercy, O son of Devaki, may you award me unflinching devotional service at your lotus feet. So continuing on, from the Vishnu Purana, we have another verse here. Nati yoni sahasreshu, yeshu vrajamyaham, teshu teshvachuta bhaktir, achudastu sada tvayi. Okay, O Lord, O my Lord, O Achyuta, among the many thousands of species of life, wherever I am born, may I always possess unflinching devotional service for your lotus feet in each of my births. So the devotee doesn't, in this case, in this verse from Vishnu Purana, the devotee he's not even praying for liberation. He's simply praying for devotional service birth after birth. Very nice. Text 435. Ya pritir aviveka anam. Vishayeshva vanapayini. Tvam anusmaratha same. Hridayan mapa sarpatu. Materialistic people are attached to sense gratification. Still, may the love and devotion that I have developed by remembering your lotus feet remain constantly fixed within my heart without interruption. And now we have from the Pandava Gita a verse, right? Kiteshu, Pakshishu, Mrigeshu, Sarishepeshu, Raksha, Pisacha, Manujesh, Vapi, Yatra, Tatra, Jatasya me bhavatu Keshava te prasadat, Tvayeva bhaktir atula, Vyabhicharini cha. O Keshava, it does not matter if I become an animal, a bird, an insect, a deer, a reptile, a demon, a ghost, or a human being, according to my own misdeeds. Please be kind to me so that I may always have firm faith and fixed devotional service unto you. Nice. In the Padma Purana, it says, Yuvati nam yata yuni, yunam cha yuvatao yata, mano biramate tadvan, mano me ramatam tvayi. Right? May my mind always remain attached to you, just as the mind of a young man remains attached to a young woman. And now, ata, again we get in text 438, we get again this idea, another slightly different idea here, right? Aparada Chamashwarapuna, it says here. So I think we've been asking that all along. We've been asking for forgiveness. But here it specifically says begging for forgiveness. So it says, thereafter one should beg forgiveness from Lord Krishna, who naturally forgives his devotees by humbly reciting selected verses that are appreciated by his sampradaya. So we see here in the last line here, it says sampradayakan. And it says kirtayan slokan. One should sing or chant different slokas, different verses that are favored in his particular sampradaya. So the tradition will be taught to the person by the guru, and the guru will teach him all of these things. Then it says, text 439, right? Tatahi, in this regard it is stated, aparada sahasrani kriyante harna sammaya dasohamiti mamapa shvashramarusupada. Right? This is also very famous, that we all know this one, for getting rid of offenses like that. Oh, my Lord, I'm committing thousands of offenses throughout the day and night. Please accept me as your eternal servant and thus forgive all my offenses. And another one that we know, text 440, it says, Parigadava Govinda Name Bhakta Parashiti Idi Samsmritya Samsritya Pranasam Darayamyaham. Oh, Govinda, I have promised my devotee never perishes. I simply remain in this world by remembering the statement of yours. Right, so we have to remember the Lord's promise, right? This is called Mahavishwas. We have great faith. This is a part of Sharanagati, or part of surrender to the Lord, right? We have great faith that the Lord promises that his devotee never perishes, and we have faith that because we're devotees of the Lord, that he will save us. So here we go, offenses to be avoided in this regard. So now we've talked, up until now, we've been begging for relief from the offenses that we might have committed knowingly or unknowingly in the puja. But what are those offenses? Maybe we can, by knowing what they are, maybe we can avoid them in the first place. Doesn't mean that we shouldn't chant those mantras for forgiveness. We should still chant those mantras for forgiveness, even if we do everything perfectly, or if we think that we do everything perfectly. So in the Agamas, it's described, ata aparadaha. Here it says again, another section here, ata, and then aparadaha means offenses. What are the offenses? So in the Agamas, it's described some of the offenses. So here are the offenses, and it says here, one should not enter. There's actually 32 offenses which come in the Varaha Purana. This may be the same as them, but anyway, it says it comes from the Agamas. So in any case, see here in the end it says Dvatrimsat. Dvatrimsat means 32 offenses. So these are the 32 general, and there can be other specific offenses, but these are 32 general offenses that we should know. One should not enter the temple while seated on a palanquin or with shoes on his feet. Right. One should not fail to observe the various festivals for the pleasure of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, such as Janmashtami and Rath Yatra. So, obviously, we take our shoes off before we go in the temple. In some cases, in Vrindavan, you have to also take your socks off. If you go to Radharaman, even in winter, you have to remove your socks, even though the floor is cold marble. And obviously you're not supposed to go inside the temple in a palanquin or being carried or in a thing like that. There can be exceptions, obviously, for disabled people, but in general, we don't make an ostentatious entry to the temple or visit to the Lord. We come in as a supplicant, as we're coming and we're presenting ourselves to the Lord as his servant, like that, not in a way like presenting yourself as a very great person. Okay, so we also have to follow the festivals that happen in the temple. There are different festivals. Each day is a festival in the temple. It's called Nityotsava. But otherwise, there are specific festivals which are mentioned here, like the birthday celebration of Lord Krishna, Janmashtami, or like the Rath Yatra, where we take the Lord out in a palanquin or a cart that goes around the temple or goes to a specific destination and comes back. So one should not avoid bowing down before the deity. One has to bow down, and that was also described before, the Shastanga Pranam, like with using 8 parts of the body, like a rod, like a stick, falling down like a stick, called Dandavat, like a stick, or the Panchanga Pranam, which using 5, just bowing down and touching your head to the floor and your knees to the floor. And so we have to bow down before the Lord. And the Lord says this in the Bhagavad Gita. It says, Manmana bhava madbhakto madjiji mam namaskuru. Namaskuru means bowing down, offering obeisances. So one should not enter the temple to worship the Lord without having washed his hands and feet after eating. So after we eat, because we're sitting down eating, we might get food also near our feet or whatever. So we wash the hands, and we also wash the mouth. We also wash the feet, and then we can enter the temple. Yeah. One should not enter the temple in a contaminated state. What is a contaminated state? That has to be determined according to your sampradaya, according to the caste of the devotee. Sometimes there'll be differences. So in Tamil, this is called Titu, or it's called Asocha in Sanskrit. So when a person is in a contaminated state. So we know that different people go through different periods of contamination. If you are diseased in some way, you're considered contaminated. If you have mental afflictions, you're considered contaminated in some ways. Women are considered in their menses to be contaminated. Men are, other people are considered, if somebody's bleeding or somebody's injured or somebody's sick with some communicable disease or whatever it is, then they're considered contaminated. Also, if somebody dies who is born in your family, then for 10 days one is considered to be in a state of asaucha, and it can go so far as if somebody in the same gotra, in the same community as you, same sort of extended community, Brahminical community, like that, is either born or dies. So there are different rules for that. So that's all explained by the guru or by your parents. So one should not bow down on one hand. I believe we had this before, this prohibition. One should not circumambulate in front of Sri Krishna. That means that we shouldn't go around something else. We should not honor some other thing in front of the Lord, right, by circumambulating it. So that's why we close the curtains for Tulsi Puja or Guru Puja, right? Any puja that we're doing in front of the deity is wrong unless we close it. We should close the curtains, and we should only do that puja when if we're worshiping some other personality, right? We don't worship in front of the Lord. So one should not spread his legs before the deity. That means when we sit, we fold our legs underneath us, in to us, so we keep our legs to ourselves. We don't point our feet at the deity because the feet are considered dirty, and it's disrespectful also. One should not sit before the deity while holding his ankles, elbows, or knees. So we have to sit in a respectful way. Do not lie down before the deity of Krishna. Lying down doesn't mean that you can't offer a dandavat pranam. You can lie down like a stick as a pranam, as a bowing down, as a sign of respect. But then you must get up. You shouldn't just lie down in a relaxed way in front of the deity. The deity in the temple is like the king. So you wouldn't go for a darshan or an audience with the king and lie down, right? One should not lie down before the deity of Krishna. One should not accept prasad before the deity. Okay, so we shouldn't eat. We shouldn't honor prasadam or eat the remnants of the Lord's food in front of him, like that. We should also close the curtain, or we'll close the altar, or we could go somewhere else and we can take prasadam, honor prasadam. One should not speak a lie before the deity. So whatever you speak should be truthful before the deity. One should not talk very loudly before the deity. So we shouldn't. That doesn't mean that you can't pray very loudly, like you're having a kirtan or a bhajan or reciting prayers very loudly. You can do that, but you shouldn't talk just normally to each other very loudly in front of the deity, right? So one should not talk to others before the deity. So we should not be overly involved or consumed by other conversations with other people in front of the deity. One should not cry or howl before the deity, right? So it should be done in a very respectful way, right? Right? If we're chanting out loud, or if we're chanting prayers or whatever like that, it should be done in a sort of respectful way. So here, of course, some people, when they do kirtan or they do bhajan, they become very emotional, and maybe they cry or they howl because they're very emotional. If that emotion is sincere, right, and they're sincerely lovers of God and have great devotion like that, then that's okay. But otherwise, howling and crying is not to be done. One should not quarrel or fight before the deity. Certainly not. We should not quarrel with other Vaishnavas, other people here who are also devotees of the Lord in the temple, and we should certainly not fight with people before the deity. One should not chastise anyone before the deity. The deity is the master. The deity is the master. You're not the master. So it's not your position in the temple to chastise somebody in front of the deity like that. If somebody does something wrong in the temple or commits some offense, you can take them aside and you can very quietly, you can just explain to them, right, what they're doing was wrong. don't sit with, you can tell them, don't sit with your back to the deity, don't put your feet to the deity, but etc. You don't have to chastise them in public like that. So one should not be charitable to beggars before the deity. Beggars usually in India, sometimes if you see beggars, they'll sit outside temples, and people who come out from the temples or go into the temples will be harassed by the beggars, and the beggars will want you to give alms to them, give them some donation. But they shouldn't be in front of the deity. So although the Lord is not giving in, the Lord is not against giving suitable people or proper, poor people charity, still it's not to be done in front of him like that. So even the king in the king's palace, if he wants to give charity, he'll send the charity out to the poor people, and it doesn't have to happen in the Darbar hall in the throne room. So before the deity, we're not dealing with beggars before the deity. One should not speak harshly to others before the deity. Okay, so this is like chastising them. We should not speak harshly to other people. One should not wear a fur blanket before the deity. Certainly a fur blanket would be made of the skin and fur of an animal, and that's not to be done before the deity. One should. Now, that doesn't mean there might be some very, very orthodox brahmacharyas who wear, or people who are mendicants, who are rishis, who wear deer skin or some tree bark or something like that. They can do that if they're before the deity. That's fine, but for normal people, regular people, wearing a fur blanket before the deity is not to be done. In fact, you shouldn't wear anything covering completely up like a blanket, covering the top. We also covered this. There was a verse about not covering the upper part of the body, right? Otherwise, you had getting white leprosy for 7 births, right? That was also described in the Prabhupada quotes that verse from here, from Haribhakti Vilasa and Chaitanya Charitamrita in one story. So one should not pass air before the deity. One should not eulogize or praise anyone before the deity. So if we're going to praise anybody in front of the deity, we're going to praise God. We're going to praise the deity. And we're not going to praise anybody separate. So similarly, we don't worship anybody. We don't praise anybody. We don't anybody else but the Lord in front of him. We don't circumambulate anybody. So we don't disrespect those people who are in front of the deity, but we also don't give them over respect in front of God. So one should not pass air. One should not speak of profanity before the deity. Okay? So no swearing in front of the deity. One should not pass air before the deity. That's pretty obvious. That means that we should digest our food properly before we go before the Lord, and no belching or passing of air. So one should not fail to worship the deity according to one's means. Okay, so if one is a very rich person, he should offer many costly items to the Lord. If one is not so rich, he can offer according to his means. So one should not eat anything that is not first offered to Krishna. Right. So we should, whenever we prepare food, we should offer it to the Lord, and then we should take it. Then we get a chance to honor his prasadam by taking it. One should not fail to offer fresh fruit and grains to Krishna according to the season. So today we have a system where we can send food, all sorts of foods and fruits and things like that, all over the world, right? So you can get fresh fruit from some place in another part of the world. So that's also possible. So today, what is not in season in the place where you're at might be in season in some other place. But in any case, the idea is that we should offer fresh fruit, fresh grains. Things should be fresh. The food which is offered should be fresh, and it shouldn't be old. And also, we should offer certain things in season. So if it's the season to offer this or the season to offer that, we should offer those things. After food has been cooked, no one should be offered it unless it has first been offered to the deity. Right. So that's very much like that other one. Don't eat anything which is not first offered to Krishna. One should not sit with his back to the deity. One should not offer obeisances silently to the spiritual master. So if we're offering obeisances to the spiritual master, or in other words, one should recite aloud the prayers to the spiritual master while offering obeisances. One should not fail to offer some praise in the presence of the spiritual master. Right. So it seems contradictory here. If the guru is there in front of the deity, then should we praise the guru or should we not praise the guru? Right? Somebody may say, yes, you can just praise the guru like that. The better thing to do is to praise the guru separately and then to have darshan of the deity and then to praise the deity when that's the best thing to do. But an exception maybe can be made for praising the deity and praising the spiritual master in front of the deity. So one should not praise himself before the spiritual master. Obviously, we want to take the humble position and we never want to praise ourselves. So one should not deride the demigods before the deity. So that doesn't mean that we can, even if we don't worship any of these demigods, right, we still should not deride them. We should not say bad things about the devatas. Because the devatas are also the devatas are also following Krishna's instructions. So these are 32 seva parads which should be avoided by Vaishnavas. Now, to fully go into them, we would have to look at the Sanskrit. But anyway, the translation is not too bad like that. Exactly what the Sanskrit says, and exactly if there's any purport, we could look and see what the Goswamis say about it. But we get the general idea. We're getting the general idea. Now he's saying in text 449 to 469, he's going to give another. Remember, I said from Varaha Purana, there's also 32. Here's the 32 offenses coming from Varaha Purana. Okay, quite long. So, Lord Varaha had instructed the earth by saying that Vaishnavas should avoid these offenses. Those who fail to do so will fall down from their observance of religious principles and perpetually dwell in hell. Eating foods given by a king is a grave offense. Right, so just because a king gave you, or a great personality gave you some food, but if it's not Krishna Prasadam, it's an offense. One should always avoid eating such food, even if he's starving. One should not touch the deity in the dark room. So if the deity room is dark, then one has to either trim the wick and make sure that the light from the lamp is shown, or either light the lamp if it's not already lit, right? Because some temples, they keep the lamp always burning, which you have to be very careful of in the Western situation because it may not be proper and it may be a fire hazard. So you have to always have light. So turn the light on, or light a lamp or something like that before you touch the deity. One should not enter the temple without first making a sound. So normally people ring a bell. They ring a bell, or they sing some praise of the deity. They say Jai Shri Shri Krishna Ki Jai, something like this. And it's just good courtesy, right? That you don't enter a room with somebody's in the room without knocking and without making your presence be known before you go in. That's just courtesy. So decent courtesy. The Lord in the temple is like a king, and you have to announce yourself before you enter the temple. So you have to make some sound. One should not offer flesh to the deity. Obviously, there might be some deities which are mentioned in Hari Bhakti Vilasa which eat flesh and fish and different things like that. There are some devatas, there's some demigods that do this, right? But Lord Krishna and the Vaishnavas, all the forms of Vishnu, they don't do that. So we don't offer those things. And even those devatas, if we have to worship those devatas that are non-vegetarian, that eat non-vegetarian food, when we come to that, if we look in the 19th Vilasa where it talks about installing the deity, there'll be some devatas that we have to worship, and it'll say that they have to be offered meat, they have to be offered this and that. Instead of offering them meat, we can offer them sweet rice. So the Vaishnavas will never offer the meat, they'll always offer sweet rice like that. So one should not offer flesh to the deity, obviously. One should not enter the temple wearing shoes. One should not offer any food to the deity that has been seen by dogs or lower animals. Right. So whenever if we bring food offerings from outside of the temple or from the temple kitchen on the way to being offered to the Lord, we have to cover that so that nobody sees the food before it's offered to the Lord. So one should not break the silence while worshiping. So what does silence mean? One takes a vow of silence when one is worshiping. It means that one is concentrating on the worship of the Lord. It doesn't mean that he has to be completely silent, right? He is completely silent unless he's chanting a mantra or unless he's chanting a prayer, unless he's chanting like this. Otherwise, he'll be completely silent. So he won't engage in just ordinary conversation with people in the middle of worship like that. So that's what it means, like that. There are some places and some Brahmins, some Vaishnavas, that they'll be performing a ritual, and during the performance of the ritual, if they want to say something to another priest, right, to get him to do something or not do something like that, they'll say it in Sanskrit, and they won't say it in the normal language. And in this way, they consider that to be still pure, the instruction to be still pure. So you'll see that sometimes there's a homa going on or a fire sacrifice in the yagshala, and the directions will be given in Sanskrit to continue on the puja like that, in that same vein. If you don't do that, if you break into another language, or if you start talking about some other subject matter in the middle of the puja, then you have to stop. You have to purify yourself by doing achmana, and then you can continue on. That's usually the system. So yeah. So we have a question here. Being silent can be so difficult as a householder sometimes. Yes, that's possible, like that. But it means that we have to concentrate. We have to concentrate on the particular worship that we're doing. So one should not pass urine or evacuate, right, while engaged in worshiping deities. Right. So normally people can control their bodily functions, and they can wait until after the puja is finished. If you can't wait, then you have to go and void, stool and urine, what we call in Sanskrit Mullah Mantras tyaga, right? Then you have to again change your clothes, and you have to again take bath, and you have to again wear tilak, and you have to again wear fresh clothes, and then you have to come back, right, to doing it. So it may be necessary to take another bath and do so many things like that. So normally these things are not done in the middle, because we become contaminated. One should not eat newly grown crops without first performing the Shraddha ceremony. One should not eat newly grown crops. Okay, so this normally refers to rice. What happens is that people get rice, and they store it for some time in the form of paddy with the husk on it. Now, after a year or so, or whatever it is like that, they'll take the rice and they'll have it threshed. They'll take it to a mill, and the person will give them back the rice, and they'll separate the husk from the rice, like that. So what he's talking about here is that one should not eat that rice, right, without first performing the Shraddha ceremony. Shraddha ceremony is where we offer pinda to the forefathers. When we offer pinda to the forefathers, we make what we call pinda balls of rice. So we should take that newly grown rice, which has just been threshed, and we should first of all do a Shraddha ceremony using that rice and offering it to the forefathers. And then we can use the rice for other things, like that. One should not eat that rice first before using it in the Shraddha ceremony. This is sort of a strange rule, but we can't exactly understand in detail why it's there, but it's there. One should not offer incense without offering some flowers. So flowers have a natural scent, right? Beautiful scent. Incense is a sort of a artificial means of perfuming the air. So we should always offer flowers if we're going to offer incense as well, like that. So there's such a thing as we talk about often. We talk about different types of arti. There's one type of arti where they offer lamps and they offer many different items like that. And there's another type of arti which is called a drupa arti, where you're just offering incense and some flowers and perhaps a chamara, the whisk to keep the flies off a great personality like the king. Unless flowers that are without any fragrance, useless flowers that are without any fragrance should not be offered, right? So the most important aspect of flowers, and we discussed flowers at length before, is that they should have a beautiful fragrance, right? One should not fail to brush his teeth very carefully every day. Now, we discussed this previously. It was discussed getting up in the morning, going and doing Mullah Mantras, doing your ablutions, and then bathing, and actually in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, I think this comes sometimes this idea of bathing and everything comes after sunrise, but normally in most padhis it comes before going to the temple at all, or performing any duties like that. So it says here, one should then brush the teeth. This is called Danta Davana. We also offer a toothbrush to the deity to brush his teeth, like that. Brushing the teeth means not just brushing the teeth, but it also means scraping the tongue. So Danta Davana and Jihwa Ulekanam. Jihwa Ulekanam means scraping the tongue, scraping the waste off the tongue, like that. So one should do that. Right now, today people use toothbrushes and toothpaste, and they use metal tongue scrapers and everything like that. It all used to be done with a twig. Before, you would bite the bark off the twig and then crush the inside of the twig, the soft inside of the twig, into a brush using your molar teeth, and then use the brush to brush the rest of your teeth, and then you can break the twig in half, right? And because it's a soft twig, one side will crack and the other side will remain like a round piece like this, and you use that to scrape the tongue. Okay, so one has to do that every day. Now, so it's usually said once a day, like that. Some people today, they brush their teeth more than once a day. That's also okay when one can do that. If one's taking more than one bath, one can also do that. One has to take a bath also when he brushes his teeth. So because he's dealing with one of the 9 gates, one of the holes in the body that are considered impure. So one should not enter the temple directly after sexual intercourse. So directly in the Vedas, it's described that after sexual intercourse, a man is considered to be contaminated until he takes bath. Woman, however, is considered purified. So I'm not sure whether this applies to women or not, but the normal system is that after sex, people will take a bath and wear fresh clothing, wear fresh tilak and all this sort of things before entering the temple. One should not touch a woman during her menstrual period. Okay, so this is the idea is that the ladies are contaminated because when they're in their menses, and then we shouldn't touch them at that time because we can become contaminated like that. So in India, in English, sometimes they say that the lady is out of the house. And this meant that in South India, sometimes they have a porch in the house. They have a front veranda. And the ladies would put a mat out there, and they would sit and they would sleep on the front veranda and sleep all by themselves. The other ladies of the house in the joint family, they would bring food to them. So they wouldn't be allowed to cook. They wouldn't be allowed to do many things. And they would simply sit and wait until the menstrual period was finished. And after their menstrual period is finished, they perform what's called the Ritu Shnanam. Ritu Shnanam means a bath, which includes washing the hair. So it's called a head bath. Means because women don't always have to wash their hair because they may have long hair. So when you have long hair, sometimes if you wash your hair every day like that, it'll be wet, and the massive wet hair can cause you to get cold and get disease. So you don't wash your hair. You simply clean it by combing it and tying it or braiding it like that. And so, but after the menstrual period, they have to completely wash the hair and everything like that. So usually they wash the hair and they clean the hair, shampoo the hair, and maybe they oil the hair afterwards like that, to, which is like when we, in modern times, they would put conditioner after using shampoo, which strips away some of the natural oils of the hair. Okay. So in any case, right, we don't touch a woman when she's out of the house like that. Now, of course, women don't have the menstrual period when they're very young and when they're very old. So in that case, we don't need to bother about this particular rule. One should not enter the temple. Yeah.
May I ask just one question here? Because I was asked today, and for me, actually, the question is already answered, but just to verify. So we have a case that there will be Vivaha Samskara, and most probably the lady will be out at that day when Vivaha Samskara should be.
Sure. Okay.
So is there any way out?
Is there any way out?
I mean, for me,
because in the ceremony, in the ceremony, everybody has to touch the bride. Like the father has to take her hand and put it in the hand of the groom, and so everybody's touching the bride, but she's out of the house.
Can she participate? Can there be vivaha if the women has?
Yeah, it's a good question. It's a really good question, and I think we should ask some other people about this question. But in general terms, I think it's an exceptional time if we're doing this ceremony. So it has to be done. It may have to be done. They may have to touch people at that time. We should also note that in Grihastha life, at the end of the period of the asaucha, which can be for some women it can be longer, and some women it can be shorter, but normally it's 3 days or 72 hours, right? And after that they take the ritu shnanam and they become purified, and at that time they approach the husband and they say ritu dehi, and it means they have the right to consummate the marriage at that time, right? To have sexual intercourse at that time. In the marriage, after the marriage, there's mantras in the marriage that say that for 3 days after the marriage, for 3 nights after the marriage, they don't consummate the marriage. So there's the Gandhara. See, Soma gave you to the Gandharva gave you to Agni, and Agni has given me to you, right? Do we know this mantra from the Vivaha? Okay. So what it means is Soma is the moon. The moon changes every month, right? The moon goes through from Purnima to Amavasya and back to Purnima, right? Right. Yeah. Women have these cycles monthly, in a monthly cycle, right? So it's the moon which are affecting them. So when a little girl grows up, when she reaches maturity, right? In South India, in some communities, there's a special ceremony when she has her first period, right? And they have a whole bunch of rituals and things to do. But in any case, from then on until she reaches menopause, until it stops, right? For every month she will be having this period, right? So there'll be a certain length of time, usually 3 days, 5 days, it could be more like that when they have the menses. Okay, so what happens is that that in that mantra it says Soma has given you to the Gandharva. So what happens in a woman's body or in a woman's life is that when she's a little girl, first of all, the moon starts to affect her. So every month she starts to get these periods. So that is Soma. That is Soma, the moon. Gives you to the Gandharva. The Gandharva is the angel. The angels represent lusty desires. So first of all comes the period, then comes the lusty desires, right? right? Or wanting to, when people attain puberty, they begin to think about sex. All right, and then so Soma to the Gandharva to Agni. Agni is very strong sexual desires. They're represented by fire, right? All of these things have a meaning, right, in the mantra. So Agni, and Agni also means the fire ritual of the Vivaha, right? Like
Right.
that. So then through the Vivaha, and then Agni has given you to me, right? The husband says, Agni has given you to me. So the girl has different people watching over her. The moon, first of all, her father and her parents, of course, as she's growing up, but then the moon, then the Gandharvas, then Agni, and then finally Agni hands her over to the husband. So it's considered that she's married to all these personalities, and that what they do is they are supposed to remain brahmachari. There's different types of brahmachari. So somebody is a brahmachari for 3 days or 3 nights. That's the minimum type of brahmachari that can be a brahmachari. You can call yourself a brahmachari if you can abstain from sex for 3 nights. So the idea is that you wait 3 nights, right? And it's one. So we have the Soma, the Gandharva, and Agni. These are considered in the first 3 nights, and sometimes they'll put a plank in between the two when they sleep, and but then after 3 nights, then they consummate the marriage, and they have what's called nisheka, which is the first union, and anyway, these are all the things. This is all part. But then later on, then after every menses, then there is what we call the ritu shnanam, and the purification, and the ritu dehi. The lady says ritu dehi, which means that she again consummates the marriage, or she again has union with her husband after the menstrual period, like that. So that's a particular time. There's other rules in the Smriti Shastras about when people can have sex and how they can have sex and what happens to them, and whether the man gets definitely contaminated, the woman doesn't, etc., etc. There's so many rules about it, but it's a very good question as to obviously she has to touch people during the wedding ceremony, but I think it must be an exception to this rule, but there may be some people who insist on not having the wedding on at a time when the bride is in this Rajaswala or Ritu in this period. There may be like that. And so let's see what in the chat somebody's saying. It would be too inconvenient to cancel a wedding. There's too much money invested, people traveling, etc. The same question was asked to Dr. Iyengar. Yes, I agree. I agree with that. It'll be too inconvenient, so they just go ahead and do it. So it's an exception, right? So for every rule that we read, we can also find some exception like that. It doesn't mean that we should always plan, to do things in an exceptional way, according to exceptions, right? The exception shouldn't become the rule, but somehow or other, sometimes it happens. Yeah. Okay. So one should not enter. It's a very similar thing here. One should not enter the temple after touching a dead body. So let's say somebody dies in your family, or you go to a funeral. You're assisting taking a dead body. You go to a funeral and you're carrying the casket, in case there's this type, or you're carrying the body to the burning grounds or to the crematorium, right, like that. Then you shouldn't immediately enter the temple. You should wash. You should cleanse yourself and purify yourself and take bath and put on tilak and be fresh and before you go into the temple. One should not enter a temple wearing red and blue garments, or garments that are unwashed. Well, garments that are unwashed, I can understand very clearly. Red and blue garments may have to do with the nature of the dyes that were used in those days were very expensive, and therefore only very rich people. And again, it's Naichana Sandana. One should seem to be humble. One should not go looking very ostentatious, and you don't dress up with all your jewelry and try to outdo the way the deities look. you know. So blue garments and red garments there's some prohibition on dressing the deity in those clothes, those type of clothes too, and also, but in reality, we do find that there's a possibility that people do use blue and red in their garments like that. Red is also sometimes related to blood and to meat sometimes, and so therefore red is sometimes not a color which is used like that. Although we have to admit that there are very, many times you see in especially in North India that the ladies' wedding saris will be red, will be a bright red like that. So whether it also represents blood, we don't know. We have to admit also that that although we have this prohibition about touching women in the menstrual period, the mensas represent life. Without the menstrual period, there can't be any life. There can't be any creation. There can't be any childbirth. So, in one sense, it's it's considered a very good thing. It's so we can't fault women that they have. Women have been cursed. This is supposed to be a curse from Indra that they've given to Indra. Indra killed and got this curse on him from killing, and he passed the curse on to different living beings according to the Puranas, and the women got some of the curse, and that's what happened. Anyway, we can't blame women for that, and we can also see the good in that thing too, also because without that there's no human life, there's no reproduction. So it's also very important. So sometimes the clothes may represent that, the red kumkum and the red dot, that may also represent that. So these are all symbols which mean things, and they have deeper meanings, but we can't really go into the deeper meanings. But the very practical thing here is that we consider the personnel to be mentally and physically a little bit contaminated at that time because of their consciousness and the body, and therefore we. But the same thing we can say the same thing for a man. If a man is bleeding, or if a man is in bad consciousness, if somebody's died or been born in his family, he may be in bad consciousness. So we have to also avoid going into the temple in a contaminated state, whether that's, even in India during the British time and even before Gandhi and everything like that, the Harijanas, people were born in low families, were not allowed in the temple. We can note specifically for Gaudiya Vaishnavas, Rupa Goswami, Sanatan Goswami, who used to work for the Muslim rulers of Bengal and were ministers in the government there. They even had Muslim names. Dabir Kash and Sakar Malik, right, were their names, were their Muslim names. They weren't always called Rupa and Sanatan Goswami. They were considered Brahma Bandhus. They were fallen Brahmins. They were rejected from Brahminical society, right, because of their association with the Muslims. Similarly, Haridas Thakur, who was born in a Muslim family. So these people, either Sudras, untouchables, or very low, or fallen Brahmins, right? They were also not allowed to enter the temple because they were considered, doesn't matter whether they wear clean clothes, doesn't matter whether they haven't touched a woman in a period, doesn't matter whether they've tried to purify themselves by bathing in the Ganges or doing whatever like that. They are considered ritually impure. Now, there's a difference between ritual impurity and physical impurity. Here we're talking about, when we talk about touching a dead body or being in the menstrual period, these things are actual physical impurities. They can also be mental impurities, where one's thinking about his relatives, or one's consciousness may be a little clouded because they're in their period. So those things are there, the real physical and mental impurities. At the same time, we have ritual impurity, like the Goswamis and Haridas Thakur involved. They could be the cleanest people in the world. They could take as many baths as they like. They could have pure consciousness. The Goswamis didn't have bad consciousness. Haridas Thakur was Namacharya, but because of the rigid caste system at that time, his very birth, for the Goswamis, it was their activities because they were born Brahmins. But for Haridas Thakur, it was his very birth and the nature was considered contaminating enough to his body that they wouldn't allow him into the temple. Similarly, foreigners. There are some temples today, even today, you can't go in Jagannath Puri temple if you're a foreigner. Indira Gandhi, the Prime Minister of India, who was the Prime Minister of India at the time, she was married to a Parsi, who was not a Hindu, right? Although she was a Hindu, she was married to a Parsi, and therefore they would not let her go in. The King and Queen of Thailand, who I guess are Buddhists, but they do worship Rama, and they do have, if you go to the Thai capital, you see that they have Ramayana all around the palace in Bangkok, right? They came to India. They couldn't go in. They were rejected for going into the Jagannath Puri temple. So the temple of Vishwanath in Kashi in Benares, the temple in Puri in Bhubaneswar, mostly in Orissa, you have these people who say, no, you cannot go into the temple if you're considered contaminated. Even in Sri Rangam, they have big signs that say Hindus only allowed. If you're not Hindu, if you're not born Hindu, they don't want you to go inside the temple. Now they make an exception because they're intelligent people, Vaishnavas, and they look and they see, yes, you people are foreigners, although you're considered, if you look in the Smriti Shastras, foreigners are considered, it's mentioned there, Mlechas, Yavanas. What are Yavanas? Yavanas are Greeks, Europeans. Mlechas are foreigners, like that. Chinna, there's the word Chinna. Chinnas are Chinese, right? There's names. There's a name for Cambodians. There's a name for Chinese. These are all Sanskrit names for these people from different parts of the world. Are considered to be so low class that they don't even come on the Varnashram scale. They're below the Varnashram scale. In India, they're sometimes called Panchamas, right? Panchamas. So we have the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Shudras. So you have Shudras who are ineligible to perform some rituals and to chant Vedic mantras, and the women also to chant Vedic mantras, but according to the Smritis, not according to the Shrutis. But according to the Shrutis, it's another thing. And then you have the foreigners who are even considered worse than that, and those people were not allowed into temples like that. So here we're talking about people not being or contaminated in some way, either by touching another contaminated person or being contaminated themselves, either physically, mentally, or ritually impure. They are not allowed into the temple like that. So these are, although we have a very, very universal philosophy, Vaishnavism, anybody can chant the holy name of the Lord, anybody can worship the Lord, anybody can surrender to the Lord like that, right? Anybody can be initiated by the spiritual master, anybody can become a Vaishnava like that. But at the same time, not anybody can perform these rituals that have to do with the agamas and the pancharatra and the Puranas or the Smriti Shastras. They follow some different rules like that. So some sects follow more of these rules than others, and some sects, it depends, right? So and you have Vaishnavism. And Vaishnavism is a little different than Brahmanism. We had a section here where we were discussing about Shalagam Shila, and it was explaining that there was some slokas from the Puranas that was saying that the Lord Vishnu, feels as though he's been struck by a thunderbolt if a woman or a Sudra touches the Shalagam Shila. So there's no way that a Shalagam Shila can be touched or worshipped by a woman or a Sudra, right? A person is born in a Sudra caste, right? So that includes all the foreigners, all the, persons like that. But what the Goswamis say in the purport there is they say we don't accept that as a rule for Vaishnavas. A Vaishnava man or a Vaishnava woman, a man who's a Sudra, or born a Sudra, or less than a Sudra, or like a foreigner, or a woman, right? Normally, women and Sudras and foreigners, they couldn't touch Shalagam, but they can if they're Vaishnavas. So they put, the Goswamis put it in a different category. They say these people are Vaishnavas and therefore they're qualified. This is where Bhaktisiddhanta, there are many examples where Bhaktisiddhanta explained. It was a very famous discussion where he talked to people about saying how the Vaishnava is equal to the Brahmin, is equal to a higher caste. And whereas other people see from the Brahminical point of view and they say, no, they discriminate against people who are, because of bodily discrimination, they discriminate against women, they discriminate against low-born people like foreigners and lechas and Dalvadas and Chinnas and Kambujas, whatever. So there are different types of Vaishnavas, and some of them are more, they tend towards following more of the Smriti Shastra, and then there are other Vaishnavas who tend to follow more of the Shrauta and the Agama. And in the Shrauta, in the Upanishads, we have the Vajrasutrika Upanishad, which is a deconstruction of caste according to birth. Because the original caste system comes from where? The original caste system comes from the Veda, from the Rig Veda, Purusha Sukta. Brahmanosya Makamasid Bahu Rajanyukutaha Rutarasya Vaishaha Padyam Sudro Jayata. This is where we get those 4 words, Brahmacharya Vaishya Sudra, from Purusha Sukta. That's from the Rig Veda. That's from the Veda. That's not from Manu. That's not from Bhagavad Gita. That's not from anywhere else. That's from the Veda, right? But what was the original meaning of that? The original meaning was the head of society, the head. If you think of society as a body, the head, the intellectuals, they're the Brahmins. The people who administer and who do things and who fight and who are politicians who guide the society are the hands, the arms. They're the Kshatriyas. The stomach or the belly that feeds the society are the business people, the entrepreneurs, the farmers, the people who grow the food and who make the produce, right? That is the business community, right? The Vaishyas, right? And then the workers are the legs of the community, like that, right? Don't mistake that that everybody who's a farmer is a Vaishya. Everybody who's a farmer is not a Vaishya. People who are farming, there's a lot of people who are farming who work for the person who owns the land. The person that owns the farm, who owns the land, that's the Vaishya. The person who owns the business, right? The person who works for him is a Sudra, right? The salesperson or the person that works on the farm, that person's a Sudra, like that. So the leaders of society are the 3 higher castes: the Brahmins, Kshatriyas, and Vaishyas, the intellectuals, the administrators, and the entrepreneurs, right? The business people. The others are all workers. They work for one or the other. So you might work for an intellectual. You might work for a business person. You might work for an administrative person or a politician, but you're not that, like that. You're a Sudra. So this is where the caste system came from, like that. And if you read the Vajrasutrika Upanishad, it'll explain to you Brahman is not according to birth. It's not according to birth. So here we have these rules and we found other rules here about the spiritual master, right? We had a rule about if there's 2 spiritual masters of equal sort of spiritual attainment, and one of them is a Brahmin and one of them is a non-Brahmin, right, or a Kshatriya, then you should take initiation from the Brahmin because the Brahmin is of a higher caste, like that. So similarly, the Kshatriya, if he has to, if there's nobody else, if there's no qualified Brahmin, he can give initiation to others, right? But usually he should give initiation only to Kshatriyas and Vaishyas and Sudras. The Vaishya, if there's nobody else, can give initiation to Vaishyas and Sudras, and the Sudra only to other Sudras, like that. So in case there's no other personality there of equal spiritual level, but of a same or higher class, like that. If that's not available, then you go with the guru that you can find. That's there in Hari Bhakti Vilas. That's the system, like that. Now we understand that that's really not the most important thing, and Prabhupada says that very clearly in the books. He says that's not the most important thing to find a person from a high class family, right? Because Hari Bhaktivilas also says that even if a person is a highly advanced Brahmin and knows all the Vedas and knows all the rituals and knows everything like this, but if he's not a Vaishnava, if he's not, so we first of all, when we find the guru, we're looking for a person who is a topmost Vaishnava. We're looking for the most spiritually advanced Vaishnava, like that. And we don't care. We don't care what section of society he comes from, whether he comes from a low class or a high class, or whether he's a man or a woman, fat or thin, black or brown, or white or red, or whatever. We don't care. We don't care on those things like that. Now, some people care. Some people care. Some people they won't. They won't accept a Sudra guru. They won't accept a woman guru. They won't accept a whatever, like that. Even if those persons are highly advanced spiritually, they have a material disadvantage. They discriminate. They discriminate against those against them because of that material disqualification. Okay, so that there are some people like that, and you just have to know that that's the way the world is. There are some people like that. They're going to discriminate like that. That's what's more important to them. So, but normally, what's more important to people is the spiritual or the spiritual qualification. Okay, so once again, we get back to the point here of entering the temple. In order to enter the temple, we should be pure. So pure means not just that we took a bath. It means also that we have to be pure in body, pure in mind, but we have to be pure in spirit also. We have to also be ritually pure. So there's a difference between ritual purity and mundane purity, scientific purity. So scientifically, just like in this pandemic, right? They say, oh, you should wash your hands with soap, or you should spray alcohol in your hands or something like that. Alcohol is not considered ritually pure, but it kills germs. Okay, so you might disinfect your hands, but you should, that is not considered ritually pure. So there are some things which are ritually pure, which are not accepted as being materially, scientifically pure, and there are some things which are scientifically pure, which are not considered to be ritually pure, like that. Like a woman in her menses may be scientifically pure, right? She may be just as pure pretty much as a man. Why not? There can be things to help them to be pure. Okay, but does that mean that we accept that person as ritually pure? No, not ritually pure. So there are two things that we're talking about here: being physically pure and scientifically pure, and or being ritually pure. Okay, so we have to take into consideration both, like that. But for one person, the ritually pure is more important, and for another person, the physically and materially pure is more important, like that. So some people put the emphasis on the material qualification, and some people put emphasis on the spiritual qualification more. Some people might say, well, both have to be there. Okay, that's up to you. So there's different thoughts on this. There's different somebody. Ramanujacharya himself. Here's an example. Okay, Ramanuja, he used to go to take bath, and when he was very old, he'd have to have somebody to lean on because he couldn't walk properly. He was very old, right? So he'd lean on somebody to give him balance, right? To walk to the river to take bath and then walk back from the river. So he's going down to the Kaveri River, taking a holy bath in the Kaveri River and coming back. So when you go to the river to take bath, you're unclean, right? When you come back from taking the bath, you've cleaned yourself and you've purified yourself in the river. So you would think that Ramanuja would when he is unclean, he could be perhaps helped by somebody else who's unclean. It doesn't really matter who helps him to go to the river, right? Who he leans on, whether he leans on a Brahmin or leans on a Sudra, it doesn't really matter, right? Because he's unclean anyway. So when he gets to the river after he cleans himself, then he's pure. He should get back to the temple, and he should be pure when he gets back to the temple. So certainly when he's on his way back, you would think he would lean on a person who's also pure, considered totally pure, ritually pure. So you would think that he would lean on anybody going down to the river, but he would only lean on a pure Brahmin coming back. But in fact, he did it the other way around. He would lean on a Brahmin on the way down, right? A pure Brahmin, and then on the way back, a non-Brahmin. He would take the help of a non-Brahmin to show that he had made no distinction between the caste of a person and his ritual purity. He considered even people who are non-Brahmins to be ritually pure Vaishnavas. So he considered their Vaishnavaness, right? It's very. There are other examples in many. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. What did Chaitanya Mahaprabhu say? He said, "Naham vipro na chananapati na pivaisho na sudro naham bani na chigriyapati na vadashtori tirva kintu projan nikila paramananda punamritabdir gopi bartahu padakamalayo dasadas anudasaha." My mentality is that I am a servant, a servant, a servant, a servant of the gopis 7 times removed, right? That is what I am. That's what I think of. That is what is most pure, is that thought that I am a servant of God. And not that I belong to some Brahmin family. But Chaitanya was a Brahmin. He was born a Brahmin. He was born in a Brahmin family. He was a sannyasi, the king of the Brahmins. He was the heads of the Brahminical community of the sannyasis. Only Brahmins take sannyas, right? Kshatris don't take sannyas. They can retire and take vanaprastha. Vaishyas don't even do that. They tend to die in their business and everything like that. So they don't even take vanaprastha. And Sudras don't even. Sudras don't even observe Brahmacharya. They're immediately married at the time of puberty. So for the different castes in the Varnashram system, there are different numbers of ashrams like that. It's only the Brahmin that can go through those 4 stages, ritually. So the Brahmin, so Chaitanya was a sannyasi and he was a Brahmin by birth, like that. He was in the top of the society socially, like that. So, but yet what did he say? I'm not those things. I don't want those things. I don't care about those things. I don't care about my social position. I am interested in my spiritual position. My spiritual position is I am a servant, a servant, a servant, a servant of the servant of Krishna, of the servants of Krishna. Like King Kulashekara said the same thing. Tad britya britya, parichadika britya britya, brityasya britya. He said, I'm 7 times the servant. I am the servant of the Lord 7 times removed. I'm low. I'm considered a low person, but I consider to be high spiritually because I serve the devotees who 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 serve the Lord. That's the most important thing. Like that. For Vaishnava, service to the Lord is the most important thing, right? For a non-Vaishnava, for a Brahmin, a person in the follow Shmiti Shastra, the Smartas and everything, social position is more important. And that's why the Goswamis were kept out of the Jagannath Puri temple or Haridas Thakur, because the caste Brahmins see like that. But the Vaishnavas see a different way. So who is ritually pure and who is not ritually pure according to the Vaishnava understanding is different from the Smarta understanding. And therefore, some rules in the Smriti Shastra are not followed by Vaishnavas. There's a rule in the Smriti Shastra: Sudras and women can't touch shalagram. So we worship shalagram. I'm a foreigner. I was born in a foreign family. I'm a mlecha. If I look in the Shastras and I judge what I am, I'm a mlecha, right? According to Smriti Shastras. But other people may say, "Oh, he's a Vaishnava, therefore, he doesn't he doesn't come under that heading." Yeah. Right. Anyway, we went off the tangent here because we're talking here about material designations and material things, and social rules that may keep us out of a temple like that. So there are some rules like that about being physically pure, materially pure, mentally pure, but also ritually pure. So they're also to be understood. And we have to be aware of those things because there may be certain, just like if you go to travel in India, don't think that you can immediately walk into Vishwanath temple in Kashi or into Jagannath Puri temple. They'll beat you, they'll throw you out because they have that mentality like that. Similarly, even if you go into a Vaishnava temple, you have to be aware of the protocol. In Sri Rangam, if you show up looking like a tourist and you try to go into the temple, they'll block you. Right? If you look like a foreigner or something like that, if you just look like a foreign tourist, they will block you. Foreign tourists walk around the Sri Rangam temple all the time. like that, taking pictures. They don't let them go in the deity rooms. They don't let them go in front of the deities, like that, because they're not Vaishnavas. They don't consider them to be pure. Similarly, if you go to Udupi, like that, they have a rule that you can't wear a blanket, you can't wear a shirt, like that, usually before noon, but sometimes the whole day, right? Like in Kerala, if you go into a temple in Kerala, they'll make you take your shirt off. You go to walk in a temple in Kerala with wearing a shirt, they'll say, take off the shirt, like that. They have their rules. So you have to be careful about, different temples have different rules, like that. Some people follow more or less the Smriti Shastras, like that. Those ones like Jagannath Puri and Kashi Vishwanath, where they follow the Smriti Shastras to the letter, to the T, they won't let you in if you're a foreigner. They won't let you in if you're a Sudra. They won't let you in if you're lower, Panchama, fifth class. They have their definition and they're sticking to it, like that. Same thing in Sri Rangam. If they think that you're just a foreign tourist or something like that, that you're not actually a Hindu, that you're not actually a Vaishnava, that you don't. When I first went to Tirupati, they said, "Oh no, if you want to go in, you have to go in. You have to sign a piece of paper saying that you won't make any problems, and that you're actually a devotee of Lord Venkateshwara, etc., like that." When they see an Indian, they don't ask him, but when they see a foreigner, they ask. They ask this question, like that. So I went and I chanted Venkateshwara Suprabhatam in the office for the guy, and he said, "No, you don't need to. I'm convinced. Obviously, you're a devotee, so go in." He took me in himself. So so there are people who are sticklers for these little rules, and there are people who are understanding, like that. Oh, so Raghunath looks Indian, so he got in to see Jagannath. My wife, went and got a good tan on the beach at Jagannath Puri one time, and she went in. She's been in and seen Jagannath too. So even though she's not, not Indian or Hindu or whatever, so that's the way it is. Okay. So anyway, we're talking about these. Let's continue on and just finish up these apparatus. So we had not touching a woman during a menstrual period, not touching a dead body during menstrual period, not wearing red or blue garments or garments that are unwashed. One should not enter the temple wearing dirty clothes or clothes that are borrowed, right? So even you shouldn't borrow clothes, right? That's considered wearing somebody else's clothes. One should not pass air within the temple. We had that in the other list. One should not become angry within the temple. We had that in the other list of rules. We should not enter after seeing a dead body. One should not enter the temple after visiting a crematorium, right? If you went to a funeral, you shouldn't go immediately into the temple. One should not belch before the deity, and so on. Until one's fully digested his food, he should not enter the temple. One should not enter the temple after eating meat, fish, eggs, or kusumba shak, a type of green leafy vegetable. One should not enter the deity room or touch the deity after having smeared oil over the body. Now, sometimes people take what's called an oil bath, where they massage the body with oil to get, deep ingrained dirt out of the pores, and they wash it off first, like that. But we should not go oiled up and into the deity room or touch the deity. So one should not disrespect the scripture, a scripture that teaches the supremacy of the Lord. There are many scriptures, right? There are different hierarchy of scriptures, and the Vedas are usually kept at the top. The Gaudiya Vaishnavas, of course, have very great reference for the Bhagavatam as well. If you want to read the hierarchy of scriptures according to Gaudiya Vaishnavism, you have to read the Tattva Sandarbha by Jiva Goswami. Otherwise, the general hierarchy of scriptures is the Shruti, and the Shruti is the highest, and then Smriti is less than that, and there are different gradations. Okay, so but anyway, any scripture that says that the Supreme Lord Vishnu or Krishna is supreme is to be respected, and we should not disrespect it. One should not introduce an opposing scripture. Opposing scripture to that sort of scripture would be an opposing scripture which says that someone other than Vishnu or Krishna is the Supreme Lord. That would be an opposing scripture, like Buddhist scripture or Jain scripture or some other scripture right there. One should not enter the temple after associating with a drunkard. Well, hopefully we don't associate with drunkards anyway, like that. But you shouldn't enter the temple if you've been with a drunkard. Probably if you're associating with a drunkard, you may be a drunkard yourself. So we should probably not associate with drunkards. One should, now, in Smriti Shastra, there's actually a difference between hard liquor and wine and beer and something like that. So there is a difference in gradation also. Just as there's a difference in gradation of scriptures, there's also a difference in the sinful reaction or whatever it is, or let's say the amount of illusion that, or the amount of contamination that somebody occurs taking one particular type of liquor. There's different words for it in Sanskrit, and if you look in Manusmriti, you'll see there's different for drinking those things. There's also different levels of punishment given in Manu, like that. Like that. They're all considered to be sins, say drinking intoxicating liquor or intoxication, but still, yeah. So it's better. It's better. There's some very hard liquors, I believe, and there's a difference in. Just like I guess with drugs, there's different levels. There's some things which are lesser and some which are more. So in Sanskrit they talk about different types of levels like that. Like for instance, Lord Balaram used to drink this what we would call in Europe, we would call it mead. It's a type of beer which is made of by fermenting honey, right? So it's a type of beer that's made from fermenting honey. And that is considered to be, that's not considered to be a very hard, very strong drug. But anyway, no, why do I get into this? Okay, so, we're talking about drunkards, right, okay. So anyway, one should not offer this Kusumbha Shak to the deity. So if you don't offer it to the deity, then you're not going to eat it because, again, we had that rule that you should always eat what you should only eat what you offer to the deity. So one should not chew betel nut. So we have different things in the Middle East. They have this quat in Asia. They have the betel nut. People chew these things. They're very, very slight, have a very, very slight narcotic effect on the body. And although we can offer these things to the deity, right? Like we offer betel nut and pan to the deity, right, to Lord Krishna, but we don't chew it in front of him like that. And so it's very familiar, and it's sort of it's also not considered to be very clean like that. Some people in India, they chew pan, and some people also have they have tobacco pan. They put tobacco in the pan, so it's like chewing tobacco, and it's a dirty habit also like that. Although taking tobacco pan or tobacco snuff, probably used to take snuff sometimes to clean out his sinuses and things like that. People take that for the nicotine in the tobacco to stay awake. I had a very good Madhva Pandit friend who used to always take snuff to stay awake all night, so he could do his book translation and editing. But normally that's considered to be the Pandit's vice, or the Brahmin's vice is the snuff, like that, because it's not as dirty as smoking or maybe chewing pan or chewing tobacco like that. So we shouldn't chew, especially also when you chew pan, you have to have a tendency you have to spit part of it out. It's like that. So you can't spit in the temple. So chewing, spitting, eating in front of the deity, even not to be done. So one should not offer Kuruvaka and Palasha flowers to the deity. We already had a whole section when we talked about flowers that shouldn't be offered or should be offered. One should not worship the deity at an inappropriate time. So that may be that where we have the deities up at midnight, and except for Janmashtami, of course, when we do some aradhana or some worship of the Lord at midnight. But otherwise, in the middle of the night, we don't worship the deity. We don't worship the deity when the deity has proper timings where the deity should be sleeping in the afternoon or sleeping in the evening, like that. So in the night. So So we should worship the deity at an inappropriate time. This may also come up later when we talk about bathing the deity on Dwadasi, like that. So we have to be careful when certain tithis occur, or even grahana, or even eclipses, right? When during eclipse, should we worship the deity during eclipse? No, right? We have to close the temple, and we have to. Some people don't agree, and some people don't want to do that. But the general consensus is that there are certain auspicious times to worship the deity, and there are certain other times when we don't worship the deity because it's inauspicious. Now, it doesn't mean that the deity itself is inauspicious. The Lord is Vishnu. Or Krishna. He's completely pure. He's always pure, right? So people say, well, why do you close the temple during a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse? Because it's not because the deity doesn't become contaminated. It's because we become contaminated and we are worshiping the deity. So we should not worship the deity in a contaminated state. So there are some things which can be done in a solar eclipse or a lunar eclipse, and other things which cannot be done. So for instance, chanting the holy name, taking bath in the holy river, these things can be done during an eclipse. There are certain other things, like we read about the second Vilasa, about initiation during the time of eclipse, like that. During the time of eclipse, or during the time of Sankranti, or some other time when it's not usually not appropriate, but it's appropriate. So there are some exceptions also. Okay, so we should be careful. This one says here, don't worship the deity in inappropriate time. So we should know what the appropriate time is by reading the scriptures. For instance, this Kala Prakashika, which is a standard book on Muhurta, tells us when the proper time to perform different rituals are. So if there's and all these samskaras, all these things that we do, vivaha and marriage, and from birth to death and even beyond, these are all considered auspicious ceremonies because the worship of the Lord is involved in them. Even the Shraddha ceremony, we invite a Brahmin to come and he represents Vishnu and we feed him like that. So in every case, in every ceremony, we are worshipping the Lord, or we're worshipping devatas, which are considered to be the limbs of the Lord, right? Or ancillary deities to the Lord, associates of the Lord, devotees of the Lord, right? And so it all has to do with worship of the Lord. And therefore, we have to take into consideration the proper time to do it. Right, one should not worship the Lord while sitting on a bare floor. One should have a carpet or mat or carpet, meaning an asana, special asana. And normally it can be made of kusha grass. But again, we're going to see in the 17th chapter about different types of asanas that can be used for worship. So deer skin or tiger skin, kusha grass, cotton, wool. Wool is a very pure asana. Right, wool never gets contaminated. So there are different asanas that we can use. One should not bathe the deity while holding him with the left hand. So take the deity with the left hand and pouring water on him. That's not to be done. So if we have to touch the deity with the left hand, we should cover the left hand with something, right, like a silk glove or a piece of silk or a piece of cloth, like that, so that we don't directly touch the deity with the left hand, because the left hand is not considered pure. And therefore, if we have to move the deity, we'll take a piece of cloth in the left hand and we'll hold the deity with the right hand and the cloth in the left hand, and we'll move the deity. When we are washing the deity, bathing the deity, we normally don't touch the deity at all, but we just pour the liquids or the water over the deity, like that. If we have to, do anything with the deity, touch the deity at that time, we should do it with the right hand and not with the left hand. So, one should not bathe the deity while holding with the left hand. One should not offer old or wilted flowers to the deity. This was also covered before in the section about flowers. One should not spit in the temple. Again, remember, don't chew pan, don't chew tobacco, don't chew things, so that you actually have to spit like that. So, but in any case, don't spit, because it's a dirty, filthy habit, and we should not do that in front of the deity in the temple. One should not display pride within the temple. Okay, one should not say this person is so great, praise a person, or be praised by other people in front of the deity. If somebody starts to praise you in front of the deity, tell them to stop. It's an offense. It's an offense against the deity. Tell them to stop. If we have some meeting and we talk about a person in front of the deity and we're praising that person like that, we should not praise other people in front of the deity. Our concentration should be on the deity. Otherwise, if our concentration is not on the deity, close the deity. If you want to say something else, if you want to talk about somebody else, Even if the person's a great acharya, whatever it is, it's best. Play it safe. Close the deeds. Like that. Because these are offenses. Right. One should not decorate his forehead with a 3-line tilak. We're Vaishnavas. So Vaishnavas wear this Urdhva Pundra, vertical tilak. The Shaivas wear the horizontal tilak, 3 lines of ash. This ash, which is considered impure. They consider it to be pure. They get cow dung and they chant certain Vedic mantras and they make a whole stack of it and they make this ash and they offer it to Shiva and then they give it out as prasadam like that. We don't consider it to be pure like that. The only ash we consider to be pure is the ash that comes from the fire ceremony, from the actual homa, like that, where we're Yagyavai Vishnu. Vishnu is Yagya. Vishnu is homa, right? We worship the Lord, Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, through homa. We can do that. And the ash from that is considered pure. Other ash is not considered pure, like that. Even though, now the ash, which is considered to be a bath, there's 7 different types of bath, right? One of them is taking bath with sacrificial ash on the body, or just putting a little bit on, or completely ash with ash. This type of ash comes from the fire ceremony. It doesn't come from this bhasma that the Shaivites make. And we should not break the temple of Vishnu. This is considered to be the temple of Vishnu, the tilak that we wear, the vertical tilak. And when we do the 3-line tilak, we're breaking the temple of Vishnu. We're breaking the Lord's lotus feet, and Mahalakshmi is also there, and we're covering it with this ash. So it shouldn't be done. It's a complete offense. Right. One should not beg flowers from others when he can collect them without doing so. Right. So if you have the ability to go out and get the flowers and offer to the Lord, you should go out and do that without stealing, without, if you have to, you can pay for them in the market like that. But if you're going out begging for flowers when you can actually buy them, you have the means to buy them, you have the means to grow them and pick them yourself, like that is an offense. One should not enter the temple without washing the hands and feet. So before we go in the temple, and many times in India you find there are taps and there's water outside for you to wash. Look, the Muslims do this. Even the Muslims do this, right? When they go to their temple, they wash their hands and feet. Many people do this. They wash their hands, mouth, and feet before they go in the temple. It's just in a culture where we take the shoes off when we enter the house. In Hawaii, they do that also, right? But in India, very much we take the shoes off before we get into the house. And in a culture where the streets are sometimes quite dirty with many dirty things, we should definitely think about washing our hands, mouth, and feet before we enter a place. Like that. When I go and see my Sanskrit teacher in Sri Rangam, when I go to his house, he has a bucket with a little scoop outside full of water for those people who visit him at his house to wash their hands, mouth, and feet before they enter the house. And when you see that, you'll realize this person is a Brahmin and he wants you to wash up before you come in. Like that. So similarly, the Supreme Lord deserves the same sort of deference. He's like a king. We should wash up and be proper before we come, be clean. So one should not offer food that is cooked by a non-devotee, food which is cooked. There's different types of food, a fruit, a flower, these things are not cooked like that. A leaf, right? These things are not cooked. So a salad, a fruit, and these things are maybe not cooked. Maybe we can offer those things, even if they're prepared by a non-devotee. But normally the idea is that the most important thing is that the non-devotee's mentality when making the food is that I'm making this food for consumption, my own consumption. Whereas the Vaishnava's mentality is I'm making this food to offer to God. It's for him. It's not for me, right? So therefore, the important thing in preparing the food is more the mentality than even what is in the food. Like that. What is the mentality, right? So we can't be sure of the mentality of non-devotees, but people who have devotion to God, people who have devotion to Krishna, we're sure about their mentality. Their mentality is that I'm preparing this for you, O Lord, to accept, and now I'm going to give to you, and after I give to you, then it becomes your mercy, and then I can take or I can distribute to other persons like that. One should not worship the deity in front of a non-devotee. Right, so in front of a non-devotee, you're going to worship the deity. The non-devotee has no faith. He has no faith in that process of worship. So for him, it's like you're showing him he just thinks this you're worshiping some sort of image or some sort of idol or some sort of totem like that. He will have no respect for that. He will in his mind commit offenses, or he may physically or verbally commit offenses when he sees you worshiping the deity. So don't worship the deity in front of other people. Go worship only in front of Vaishnavas, in front of at least Hindus, people who have an appreciation for deity worship. One should not worship the deity without first worshipping Ganapati. Okay, so this is stated by, there are many prayers. There are prayers where Lord Vishnu says that one should first worship Ganapati before he worships me. Now we all know we should pray to the Guru, and we should get the blessings of the Guru first. Okay, so we should also get the blessings of Ganesh or Vishvaksena, right, before worshipping Lord Vishnu, like that. So there's a hierarchy, and then there's a procedure that we should follow. We should follow the procedure of our own sect or of our own sampradaya. So, for instance, for Sri Vaishnavas, they'll always pray to the Guru first, then they'll worship Vishvaksena, then they'll worship Vishnu, right? For in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, either Vishvaksena or Ganesh is worshipped. First the Guru, then Vishvaksena or Ganesh, and then worship Krishna, like that. So there's a method of doing it like that. The reason why Ganapati is mentioned here, because Ganapati is the Lord of Hosts, and Ganapati is supposed to be called Vigneshwara. He gets rid of obstacles in the worship. So it's even described in Brahma Samhita that he is a great devotee of Narasimha, because he feels like the feet of Lord Narasimha are on his head, the bumps on his head, and often has these bumps on his head called tumuli, like that. And he feels that he is a devotee of Lord Narasimha. Lord Narasimha, of course, can completely destroy all obstacles in our devotional service. Not that Lord Krishna can't. Lord Krishna can, Rama can, any form of the Lord can, like that. But we specifically, if we feel very great obstacles, sometimes we pray to Narasimha. So like that. Ganesha is a great bhakt of Narasimha according to Brahma Samhita. So, right, yat padda pallava yugam vinidaya kumbhaganve pranama samaye saganadiraja. Ganadiraja means Ganesh. Vignam vihantam. Vignam vihantam. Vignam means obstacles. Vignam vihantam alamasya jagat trayasya. Jagat trayasya. In the course of the Supreme Lord who controls the three worlds, right? Jagat trayasya, the three worlds. Govindamani Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. I worship Lord Krishna, who's the Supreme Primeval Lord, like that. So, and Prabhupada even mentions that if you want to worship these different devatas like Ganesh, like that, you can use that verse from Brahma Samhita, that Pada Palava Yugam Vinidaya Kumbha, like that. Use that verse. That's a very good verse to use, like that. The normal verses are also used in Rupa Goswami uses the regular verse from the Shukla Yajurveda. Gananam dva ganapatigum havamahe nidinantva agnidipatigum havamahe priyanantva priyapatigum havamahe, etc. He uses that verse in his Sri Krishna Janmatiti Vidi, the method of worshipping and bathing Lord Krishna on Janmashtami, right? And that prayoga is followed by, that procedure is followed by in Radharaman temple in Vrindavan twice a year, because Radharaman has his own appearance day as well as Krishna Janmashtami, so they do it twice a year. His own appearance day is, of course, Narasimha Chaturdasi, which is the appearance day of Lord Narasimha. Okay, so in any way, so those people who say, okay, you can't worship Ganesh like that. Okay, there may be some gurus who say they don't allow their disciples to get sidetracked by the worship of Ganesh. They don't want them to do that, so because they say they might become sidetracked. Like Prabhupada said, okay, you can worship Ganesh, but only if you give me $100,000 a month, like that Guru Kripa, he said to Guru Kripa. Okay, that's fine, like that. So the Guru can also, this is a detail. This is not a primary principle here. It's a detail. But in general, people, all Hindus, except perhaps Sri Vaishnavas, right, worship Ganesh before they worship Lord Vishnu, like that, because he clears away obstacles like that. I even have a very nice stotra, which is written by Radha. It's the Radha Krita Ganesha Stotra. It's the prayers worshipping Ganesh by Radha, written by Radha. Okay, so we shouldn't disrespect the demigods, right? And if our society, if our sect, if our sampradaya allows it, we should also worship Ganesh. This, I mean, obviously Gaudiya Sampradaya allows it, but whether a particular sect of Gaudiyas permit it, right, or encourage it, that's up to individual gurus, because it's a detail. It's a detail thing. It's not primary. So one should not worship the deity after conversing with a tantric. What does that mean exactly? I'm not exactly sure what they mean by tantric here, because we're all tantrics. We all follow the agamas. We follow the Pancharatra agamas, which are tantras, like that. So we're all tantrics in one sense. In another sense, we're all smartas, right? Because we also follow some of the Smriti Shastra. We don't follow all of it, but we follow some rules of the Smriti Shastra as Vaishnavas, right? Smritis are important works, right? What does Rupa Goswami say? Shruti, Smriti, Pranadi, Pancharatra, Vidim, Vida. We should follow the Shruti, right? We should follow the Vedas. Shruti, Smriti, we should follow the Smriti Shastras, Dhamma Shastras. Puranadi, beginning with the Puranas, right? We should follow the Puranas, especially the Bhagavad Purana for Gaudiya Vaishnavas. Shruti, Smriti, Puranadi, Pancharatra, we should follow the Pancharatra agamas. Those persons who don't follow those things, right, they create a disturbance in society, right? Without those things, we can't have proper devotional service to the Lord. Like that. So all those scriptures help. Now, when we see those scriptures may have some details which contradict each other, then we have to look at the hierarchy of scriptures and see which is more important. We also have to look to our lineage, look to our sampradaya, our tradition, our guru parampara, what they have told us to do, which is more important and which is not more important. And then we know exactly how to apply these things. And when a contradictory statement in some of these scriptures can be accepted or rejected on different bases, like that, right? Okay, so conversing with a tantric, don't really know what it means in this sense, but it probably means somebody who is a non-Vaishnava tantric, right? We should not talk to that person and then go to see the deity, like that. One should not bathe the deity with water that's been contaminated by touching his nails. So very carefully, if you're doing the Ankusha Mudra and you're stirring the water or touching the water and you're calling the holy rivers, then you shouldn't touch the nails to the water, like that. So you should be careful and you should trim your nails, right? They should always be trimmed, so we don't get dirt under them. We don't contaminate things by touching them with the nails. The nails are like hair. They're considered contaminated, like that. We should keep them short, just like we should shave the head and we should shave the face. Should keep the hairs on the body trimmed, like that. In fact, some archakas in South India, what they do is they do a complete shave, the whole body except for the eyebrows, the whole body except for the eyebrows every 3 months. That is called sarvangam. So sarvangam means all the limbs, like that. So you have to get a barber, and the barber will come to your house and he'll shave you from head to toe, like that. People do that. Right, so hair, nails, these things are considered contaminating. So we should not bathe the deity with water that's been touched by the nails. What to speak of having hair in it or whatever, something other contaminating. It should be pure. Everything should be pure for the deity. One should not break silence while worshipping. We discussed that before. It means that we should not break our concentration. Doesn't mean that we have to completely be silent because we have many prayers to chant. One should not worship the deity with a sweaty body. That's very difficult if you're in a very hot place like India, like that. But in fact, it is possible to worship the deity without breaking a sweat. And we should why? Because the sweat is also, perspiration is also considered a contaminating thing. If the sweat pours off us and pours onto the liquids and or the food offering or whatever it is, that's another problem, like that. That has to be rejected. So because of this, we may have to consider ourselves out of the running for being a pujari if we sweat too much, like that, because we are contaminating the things that we're offering to the Lord. So we have to be mindful of that sort of thing. Okay, so continuing on, says, text 470 says, apart from these offenses, one should avoid transgressing the other rules that are mentioned in the Shastra. Well, okay, here in one sentence, we're talking about all the other rules in the Shastras, all the other Shastras and all the other rules. Well, that's a lot of rules, okay? So one should never display disrespect for the remnants of Lord Krishna's food. Okay, so prasadam has to be properly disposed of also. If it gets old, or if it gets stale, or if it gets, if it's mixed with something which is impure, right? If it cannot be eaten, if it cannot be eaten, right, it cannot be properly honored, then it has to be disposed of in a proper way, like that. Okay. So Narada, speaking to King Santanu in the Narasimha Purana, says, "O foremost of king, never show disrespect to the remnants of Lord Narasimhadev's food, nor to the demigods." And continuing on, says, "One who desires to please Lord Krishna should never swear in his name." Right? Doesn't mean that you don't take vows in front of the deity. There are certain sankalpas or vows that you can take in front of the deity, but you should never swear in the name of the deity like that. One should never partake of the remnants of demigods and goddesses like that. So we should not take the food. We should not take the prasadam. As Vaishnavas, we should not take Shiva prasadam. We should not take Devi prasadam. We should not take Ganesh prasadam. We should not take all this other prasadam of Anya Devatas. We should only take Vishnu prasadam or Krishna prasadam. In the Vishnu Dharmottara it said, "O Brahmana, Lord Keshava is pleased with a person who, even during times of danger and distress, does not swear by uttering his name." So we can utter the name of the Lord, but we shouldn't utter it in a swearing way. Right? Right? The Lord, the Supreme Lord, who becomes satisfied with one, but it's better than nothing. Let's put it that way, because this may be an offense. But if we're chanting the holy name of the Lord and while we're swearing or something like that, it may be somewhat of an offense, but we get eternal benefit from chanting the name of the Lord. So the benefit is eternal. The effect of the offense will be temporary. So even then, I would say it's not completely out of the question, swearing and using the name of the Lord, swearing when we're swearing. But it's considered a seva aparad. It's considered in deity worship to be not a good thing. The Supreme Lord, see, there are things in the chanting of the holy name where there's no offense. There is offense if we do it in deity worship, because deity worship is according to the agamas, and there are certain rules in the agamas. The Supreme Lord also becomes satisfied with one who never accepts the remnants of food that are offered to the demigods. So just by not taking Devi Prasad, Ganesh Prasad, Shiva Prasad, Lord Vishnu becomes pleased with us. We don't even have to take Krishna Prasad. But if we just don't take demigod Prasad, he becomes pleased. So now we're going to come to atonement for offenses. So I think we can leave it here. And if there are any questions, because atonement for offenses will be another topic, we get ata aparada samanam. Yeah. So very interesting sections today. Any questions? Exactly. We went off onto a few tangents and things where we had to go more deeply into the subject, and therefore, that's fine like that. But at least we're getting through this section, and we're understanding all of the offenses and the things which are supposed to be prohibited, the seva aparads. Yeah. Another thing that we can do is the Pavitropana Ekadasi festival. We can do the Pavitrotsava, where we make the silk garlands or the garlands. That'll also be described in Hari Bhakti Vilasa, and offer those to the deity once a year. And any knowing or unknowing offenses that we committed, agyata or agyata, right? Agyana, so agyana. That's what it said in the verse there. Whether knowingly or unknowingly I committed some offense, please forgive me for those offenses. So we can do that like that. There's other atonements. So we're going to talk about atonements coming up.